I found this humorous. Hello everybody, I am Mike Levin on Wednesday, February 17th, 2021. And I've been thinking about my shtick a little bit recently, especially with this run of videos I've done settling into my new machine, and I realize I like to crank out minimally edited, genuine videos that parallel my day-to-day work. And I've been zeroing in on an interesting topic to push out every day or two. And I try and get down to its essence, even though I know I'm a bit wordy sometimes. And since I don't edit, you see the raw process, mistakes and all. And by doing that, I create a more genuine and in-context video than most of the alternatives you'll find out there on YouTube, I think. So today the topic I want to get to is graphics on the Windows subsystem for Linux, or WSL2 in particular here. And even though Microsoft announced support for this natively, I'm still going to do the video. So here is Craig Lowen, the program manager at Microsoft, working on this stuff. And he has demonstrated in this little video here a fully interactive version of Windows running Linux graphical apps natively. You can see him pulling up GIMP there. It's a great example. I don't think I'll be showing GIMP here because you run it natively. I do this because it parallels my work, and what I generally need to do, and if I get to it today, is I automate Chrome. And to understand why this is all an important thing for me before I actually get into how to do it, I thought I'd give you just a tiny bit of context on how I do my work. So that box I draw all the time representing your your hardware. Inside of there, let's call this Jupyter. It doesn't matter whether it's a notebook or lab, it is Jupyter. And I create IPYNB files there, which are IPython notebook files that still lurk underneath in the Jupyter world because they're notebooks, they are not .py files. However, when I do turn them into py files, this, by the way, is very much a Windows context. Everything in white here is a Windows context. Now, when I test them for server deployment, I don't know, let's put that in green. I do that over here in the Windows subsystem for Linux 2 in particular. And here I turn those files into .py files. And this runs very much in the context, of course, of Linux. That's what all these videos I've been doing recently are about. So, this is something Microsoft has given us lately so that it can work a lot like, well, like the third place I push my stuff, which is up into the cloud. So let's do the cloud, I guess, in blue, and that typical icon that everyone uses for the cloud. And then there is a very much equivalent to that WSL2 machine out here living in the cloud, but rather than WSL2, it's EC2, Elastic Computing Cloud instance from Amazon. In my case, for work. However, there certainly are other cloud servers you can put it on. And so the flow, my workflow, goes from Jupyter to WSL. And then well, you know what? I was going to draw an arrow out there, but this is really interesting because if I do it like this, it never goes outside my machine. I just, copy it over because of native local file system stuff. but both things get pushed up to GitHub. That's a capital G because it's not just Git, it's GitHub I'm using. Okay, so this gives us a whole deployment system. I usually will log into my cloud server, but this can be on a scheduled basis or whatever, and it sends up a request to GitHub, and it gets an update from GitHub. And this is the deployment system. That is, you know, CI, continuous integration and deployment. Git has hooks where you can automate all this, but that is my workflow, and it has lots of advantages, like experimentation. You can go crazy experimenting here. This is very human. There's nothing you can do to really mess this up. You experiment, you do lots of things in your little REPL environment. I always draw REPL poorly. Read eval print loop. That's important because you get to experiment. And then here you stabilize it. And then here it's running 24/7. And then here it's, you know, 24/7. So that's interesting or important to know about why I'm doing any of this. Oh, so the Chrome automation. So, you know, Chrome automation, when I'm doing it here, you can actually see Chrome. And here, Chrome, you can't see Chrome, headless. And then again over here, you can't see Chrome. It's the same deal. Invisible Chrome is running. And so there you go. That's my context. So we go back over here and we get to it. It's really just another thing to put in your bash profile on the Linux side. But I thought I would demonstrate to you what's going on. This is all contained inside what's called a virtual LAN for security. There's a VLAN, V-L-A-N. And that means this is private. This is cut off from the world. And you know that because, well, let me just fire up a Ubuntu session, Ubuntu 20.04. This is Linux under Windows. And if I type that command that I want to demonstrate to you here, it's going to show you some output from this file. It's going to just send the output of this text file that's sitting on my hard drive and show you that this was created automatically by WSL, and it has assigned an IP to that machine in your private network. You can tell it's a private network because of 192.168. That might sound familiar. It's the same IP range that's used for routers. It's like 10 dot something. It's a private IP range. It's not part of the public internet. So this little virtual machine is cut off from the world, really, given its own IP, and then there's trickery in order for messages to get in and out from here so that it's not a dangerous security context. So Microsoft did good things. However, to get our IP, to get this full IP now, we have to do these little tricks. So this is the full command I'm going to be putting into my bash RC, and I demonstrated to you just now this little part. But if I choose out to grep nameserver and I run that, notice this output here, these that's really one line, 2, 3, 4 lines. It now becomes just one line, the line that has nameserver and IP. And then the last piece, piping it into awk. can see those parentheses, so you really only have to get it out to there. We're getting inside the parentheses. There's your IP. That IP is what you need to know because it is going to be set to the environment variable called display. So display is going to be equal to the output of this program, your IP, followed by :0 to port 0. So you're exporting display IP number :0 to an environment variable. And so without further ado, we just pick that up. And you remember all these tricks I've been showing you before with editing your profile? This is the kind of stuff we've been leading up to. I can just type profile and do it and put it in here. However, for those joining in on this video, you should know that if I cd to ~/ it brings you to your Linux home directory, /home/Ubuntu in my case, because that's my username. And inside of there, if you look in there, there is a bash profile that I just made. And if I text edit that with vim bash _ profile, but it's got a period at the beginning, which makes it invisible, bash _ profile, you will now see that same thing as if I just typed the word profile. And in a very meta process, I can show you that is because I created an alias in my bash profile, making the word profile launch that same command. That is exactly what I'm doing again here, but I'm making an alias. Well, no, I'm not making an alias. In fact, it's not an alias. It's just exporting to an environment variable. I could do this manually. I can type it out on the command line. In fact, I will. And I have now just done the same thing as quit and rerun the bash because that executed that command. So what did that do? Output my IP to display port 0. Why is that important? Because this next thing we're about to install has to send its output somewhere. And seeing what I just showed you will make the next step make more sense. So you just go to your browser and you search on that. SourceForge is a reliable enough source. And we download VcXsrv. I've got to get used to saying that. I am not good at it. Show in folder. There's my download. Double click it. We'll be warned. Answer yes. Don't even know if that's going to show because of I'm not on a virtual machine like a lot of people making these videos. This is the real deal. I mean, I'm on a virtual machine in the sense of a hypervisor hardware level one for the Windows subsystem, but I am not on a Windows 10 virtual machine. This is my real desktop. And so fonts, start menu, desktop. For the sake of the video, I'll accept all the defaults. I'm going to try and stay as close to defaults as possible. It's going to be in C program files, VcXsrv. We'll remember that just in case, because we will actually need to go into one of these directories to launch something that is not put on the start menu. What do you mean? Well, this is a server, see? VcXsrv, that SRV stands for server. And servers need to be started. So I did tell it to put it on the start menu, which is good. That means we'll find it. Well, maybe not. VcX. Okay. It found the installer app, but it did not find the icons. Remember how I said it might be important to remember that location? Well, this thing is installed, and it hasn't really given me any output. So I know from having done this a number of times before. What do you mean a number of times before? Yeah, we're just settling into a new machine. If you go to my YouTube channel, My channel is my name, youtube.com/MikeLevin. And
Hello,
you look at
everybody.
my videos.
It is.
You just look for the googly eyes. This is about 11 months ago I did this one, almost 10,000 views on that. And if you keep scrolling down, you'll find a year ago I did another one, and that has 6.5 thousand views. It's a popular topic. And there's all these little nuances, and you'll find people just plowing through these steps. Oh, it put it on my desktop. That's nice. So Xlaunch is one thing. Xlaunch will, in fact, launch this software. And that's just running the server, but I want it auto-starting with my system every time. I happen to know where that location is and the program I actually need to run. Xlaunch. Yeah, okay, that is a shortcut to Xlaunch they put out there. So this will work for us. We can double click that, and we can, multiple windows, that's the correct default, display number. Has to match, right? Remember that display number, that :0 at the end of our little text file that I just put in there in my profile, and the command I executed? That :0 is tied to this, so you do need display number 0. We don't want it to start a client. We don't want it to start a program. This guy here I usually do check, but it's ghosted. Okay. Disable access control, connections from all clients. Yeah, we're going to let it accept connections from all clients. No one's going to be able to send X window commands, X server commands to your private desktop. And save configuration. Now, this is an important thing. This is where the magic begins. This is where the other videos fail to cover. And I do not have Xsrv running. You can see in those icons there. But I want it to be running automatically whenever my system starts. Now, this is the trick. There's this long, crazy location you can find on your machine. I happen to have made a note of it here, but I'm going to show you a trick for doing it. On your start bar, there's very often stuff you have installed that is custom, not just an icon. So we go More, and we go Find Open File Location. And you can see the icons that I made install as icons. I guess any of these would have worked as well to find this directory. Now from this directory you want to go into Startup, and this is where we're saving the output of this program to. I cannot emphasize that enough. However, it's hard to get that same path. I guess you can do this. Go like that. Go like that. And config.xlaunch is a fine name. And we hit save. And now that is in your startup location. It still says that's empty. That's a little bit concerning. We go a level up. I don't see it there. I go back into startup. Save configuration. It says it right there. Ah, see, that's in Documents. It did the switcheroo on me. So I'm going to just drag it from my Documents folder. Again, I hit Windows E to bring up another Explorer. I go to Documents, and then I just drag that config file over here. And that will now automatically start up. I've done two things now to create auto startup events. One is when Windows powers on, this little guy will be running. And public networks allow access. The first time you run it, you're going to have to allow it to do that. And you do have to allow access because another server on a shared network is going to be talking to this and making those windows pop up. So there's Xsrv running. Now we can close out of this because it did its job. We can even get rid of this from the desktop. We really don't need that. That will always be running. I will in fact move it over there so that I don't have to look at it. I forget about it. Get back to as much focus as possible. And whenever I run graphical software from Linux, it will display on my Windows desktop now. However, I do not have graphical software at the moment because this is a fresh install, and that's where we do the sudo apt get install X11 apps. Now, I will concede to the new trend that's going on, and I will do sudo apt install. I usually do apt-get. That seems to be old school with the trends that are going on these days. X11 apps. And this will put a whole set of little apps. Did I do XLL? X11 apps. And it's just going to put a whole bunch of little things on my system that can let me demonstrate this. Now, this should be a moment of truth. I should just be able to type XIs. There they are. And here, I'll ensure a popular video, because when I make these XIs big, and that's in the screen snapshot, there, I've assured myself a popular video. But you can also do see how that's locked up the console? A little more Linux. XIs ampersand. That'll free up the console there. If you just put an ampersand at the end of your command, it spawns it off separately and does not lock up your command line. It's always been difficult for me to resize these XIs because the lower right where I try and reach is not there. Xcalc is another. There's a little calculator, and now again, not the most impressive things in the world, but these are in fact Linux graphics applications running on a Windows desktop. I guess I can also show you the clock. There's a clock, famous clock. A lot of people don't like to see the background of the clock, that white background. So there is also o'clock. Just kind of a joke on X Windows, O Windows, because you can punch out the background. Ugh, so difficult to do the resizing. I'm sure Microsoft's implementation will be better, but they promise things like resizing and stuff. There's resizing. What else do they promise here in that tweet? Displays Linux application icons, simultaneously run multiple Linux apps. You saw me doing that. Complex Linux applications that have audio, so they're going to have deeper driver support. This will be worth waiting for, but in the meantime, you really don't have to wait. And I'll just do that last one because so much of what I do is about Chrome, and this picture looks ugly. I'll just back up a bit to before it was ugly. But you see, it's mostly about running Chrome for me right now, Chrome automation through Puppeteer. And even though it's so much Python in the picture, I do, use Python to control JavaScript and Node. I execute commands I create, essentially, Node command line commands that take parameters on how to control different websites in different ways. And to that end, I need Chromium. So I'm going to, as a bonus, apt-get install Chromium Browser. And get rid of these guys. Apt sudo apt install Chromium Browser. Now, why Chromium Browser instead of just Chrome? Because this is a freshly installed system, and the Ubuntu software repo is set to just use true free and open source software that's not very license encumbered. The actual Chrome version has a bunch of proprietary stuff in it, and you have to add that that repo. Was it really as simple as that? Was it as fast as that? Wow. Okay. So they're giving some instructions here, but I do believe, from my experience, I should just be able to type Chromium Browser. Requires Chromium Snap to be installed. Snap install Chromium. Okay, what the heck? Okay, I tried to sudo apt install Chromium Browser, and then when I tried to run it, I get this message about please install it with snap install Chromium. Attempts to do that lead me further. Me detects rabbit holes here. So I go back to the internet, I look up what this snap thing is, and I find that it's an app store for Linux using containerization. It's a great way to drop in ready-made binaries and stuff so that otherwise complex apps just spring to life. But it's not what I want to do here, because it's got chicken and egg problems. You need the graphical desktop in order to use Snapcraft. It's a desktop related app. So, like a store, first thing I'm going to do is remove Chromium Browser and its dependencies. Clean my machine back up, get rid of what I just did with the apt install, clear my screen, and then go down on this Ubuntu page, Ask Ubuntu, where they talk about this stuff and look over some of the solutions. I'm skipping over adding this random PPA if it's not official. I don't want it. I'm skipping over this this solution here. And here's one that feels good to me. If you can live with Chrome instead of Chromium, now I said I was using Chromium just to avoid this step. However, what I'm going to be doing is downloading the Debian installer for Chrome Stable directly from the Google site, right? That looks pretty good. That's official. You can see. And amd64.deb, it's an indicator that it'll install on Ubuntu. So I type that. It's going to download that file to my home directory. I can do an ls. You can see that file sitting there in my home directory. And then I am going to apt install it from the current directory. See, that's from the current directory. And because I'm using the apt program still, it will do dependency resolution, which is a really nice thing. The traditional problem with doing these downloads and installs is that dependency resolution is a real pain on Linux. When you install from source. Well, this is not so much installing from source because it has that .dep extension. It gives you all the same advantages of the Debian/Ubuntu repository, just with a local download. Do the install, and this will probably be typing Chrome instead of Chromium Browser when this is done. Figuring out what to type to actually launch it after one of these installs is done is an issue. You might think that all this gobbledygook here is a detraction from Linux. Lindos. Yeah, I'm making the Freudian mistakes. What we are witnessing here is nothing less than the gradual transformation of Windows into Linux. You'll see it happen over the next few years. This is one of the reasons why it's really worth following along with me. This is the path to getting the best, most modern Linux hardware and slick, equipment from Microsoft. It's amazing. So it's done installing. Let's try just typing Chrome Browser. And I just need to take a look at now what the name is that you launch it as. Probably Google Chrome Stable. well, there it is. Okay, so make it the default browser, automatically send statistics. We don't need any of that for these purposes. And there you have it. This is Linux Chrome. Now you do have this command line here, and I'll look at that in the future, but you've got Chrome here. And I don't even have Chrome installed on my new machine right now, Windows side, but I do have Edge, which is based on the Chrome source code. So here is Edge and Chrome side by side. So let's go to Google. Go to Google. Whoops. Copy buffer not in common. That's an interesting thing. Yeah, definitely not. So there will be subtleties to get used to. And of course the performance isn't quite the same. And your pointer, look at how tiny your pointer is. I'll have to address that. But this is because of this little X server that's running. This program here, VcXsrv, right? Download that, you create the config file, you drop it into that magic location, and it'll start every time with Windows. Now anytime you run Windows or Linux graphics software, it'll just pop up the interface such as it did here. Now you have Windows supporting graphics in the Linux subsystem for Windows. The Windows subsystem for Linux. All these Freudian slips. But you see where we're going here. The line is being blurred between Windows and Linux until there is no line. And then Microsoft will be a fully free and open source based software or based company. How to even say it, with just proprietary bits sprinkled in to give you power tools that will make your work even faster and easier. So thanks for joining me. Hope to see you again soon. And don't forget to subscribe.